Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are opening up your sources to tackle, well, one of the biggest conflicts of modern life.
It really is.
How do you pursue genuine self-mastery when you are constantly, and I mean constantly, being pulled by the convenience, the promise, and, let's be honest, the cost of technology?
Right. We're looking for that sweet spot between something being useful and becoming an utter dependency.
And the source material today is just fascinating. It's this blend of ancient stoicism, strict budgeting, some really contemporary health controversies, and the razor-sharp logic of high-stakes poker.
So our mission, it's very clearly defined. We're charting a course toward control, real control.
Inner control.
Exactly. We need to extract the actionable insights. How do you minimize that reactivity, that impulse response we all suffer from, and maximize your inner game?
And that means applying some pretty ruthless, rational thinking to everything, from, say, justifying a new gadget to how you manage your texts and emails.
And ultimately knowing when to fold.
Which brings us, naturally, to a perfect illustration of this whole conflict. The simple act of trying to upgrade your workstation. Oh, yeah. We heard about the sheer enthusiasm for these new, sleek, responsive touchscreen monitors, this promise of total optimization, only to run into an immediate physical blockade.
Yes. The expectation was, a quick, seamless upgrade, maybe a 30-minute job to install a few monitors and then just jump straight back into work.
Of course.
But the physical reality just intervened.
Yeah.
The sources mentioned these really difficult screws, awkward mountings.
The little things.
The little things that immediately derailed the whole schedule and just completely disrupted that state of flow you were hoping to get into.
It's a classic metaphor, isn't it? The very technology that's promising speed and efficiency introduces this unexpected friction that just halts everything.
It doesn't just waste time, it creates frustration, and it completely messes up the mental blueprint you had for your day. And that initial frustration, that really sets the tone for your entire relationship with that piece of tech. If the tool is supposed to serve you, but it's frustrating you before you even plug it in,
then you're already starting off on the wrong foot.
You're building a relationship based on obligation, not utility.
So let's talk about that workstation now that it's finally installed. I mean, it sounds like a powerhouse. New, sleek, fast, highly responsive.
It does.
But when you actually tally up the equipment, we're talking 7 monitors, 4 tablets, and 3 phones. It starts to look less like a workstation and more like a technological ecosystem that just demands constant maintenance.
And that immediately sends us back 2,000 years. We're talking about Seneca's core warning.
What was that?
Luxuries become necessities before we realize it. And this isn't just about wealth. It's about conditioning. Every single piece of that equipment, from the 7th monitor down to the smallest tablet, is bought with a rational justification.
Right, the I need this for work excuse.
Always. I need this extra screen for my charts, or this specific tablet is only for when I do client presentations.
And that continuous rationalization, that's the real mental cost, isn't it? The source admits the justification is always for work, which sounds responsible, but it masks the real motivation.
Which is often just the pursuit of the next best thing.
And the psychological toll is noted right there in the sources. Adding more screens leads to seeing more but feeling less.
That phrase is so profound because it perfectly describes information fatigue. When you have 14 screens flashing information at you, your brain, it shifts from deep processing to just superficial scanning.
You're just skimming the surface.
Exactly. You gain breadth, you see more data points, but you lose all the depth. You feel less connected to any single idea or chart. It's a continuous stream of inputs that just leads to desensitization.
And these sophisticated tools become just background noise.
And let's not overlook the financial cost of just sustaining this digital infrastructure. The lifetime tech cost is estimated to be way above $50K.
That's a massive commitment.
It is. And that $50K, that's just the hardware. That's just buying the stuff. We also had to account for the ongoing operational costs.
Like subscriptions.
Yes. We specifically noted the commitment to 3 separate AI services, 2 subscriptions to ChatGPT and 1 to GenSpark.
Okay, can you clarify that? Why the redundancy? What is GenSpark?
Well, it really speaks to the specialization you need in these complex fields. ChatGPT in its 2 forms, that's probably a standard user account and then a more expensive professional or API access.
For custom models and things.
Right. That serves as a general utility tool. Idea generation, basic coding, advanced research. But GenSpark is different. It's generally a specialized enterprise-level AI service.
So for more heavy-duty tasks.
Exactly. Based on the context of strategy and analysis, GenSpark is likely used for high-level data analysis, maybe proprietary financial modeling, or legal document synthesis, stuff that standard ChatGPT just isn't designed for or licensed to handle.
So the argument is that this massive financial drain, the $50K in hardware, plus these recurring AI costs, it's all necessary to stay effective professionally.
That's the justification.
But even with all this supposed optimization, the technology immediately created a major technical conflict that just destroyed its intended use.
Absolutely. The very sleekness and responsiveness of the new tactile monitors.
The touchscreen.
The touchscreens. They created an immediate friction point with external security protocols. The casino application, which is necessary for the poker and trading work, it detected the touch functionality and automatically rejected the login.
Why? Why is a touchscreen monitor seen as a threat by casino software?
It all boils down to anti-cheating measures. Tactile interfaces or peripherals that mimic them, they're often flagged as potential vectors for cheating.
So they think you could be using it to automate your play.
That's the fear, specifically through macro inputs. Security systems are worried that a user could program the touch surface to execute complex automated betting patterns, or integrate software that reads card data and then immediately executes an action based on a touch. To the security algorithm, the touchscreen is a potential automation risk.
That is fascinating. A piece of hardware designed to maximize human interaction is rejected because it's seen as being too easily automated.
And the consequence for the workflow is crippling. I mean, it just kills it. The user is forced to physically pull the plug on the monitors just to access the poker platform.
But then what happens to your analysis software?
Well, that's the problem. If the monitors are unplugged, the core analysis tool, Poker Tracker, becomes useless. It needs the full display and often specific access provided by those peripherals for real-time tracking and analysis.
So the technology is dictating the behavior. You bought 7 monitors to enhance your workflow, and now they're forcing you to disconnect them, which makes your most important tools inoperable.
It perfectly embodies that challenge from Epictetus. Freedom is the only worthy possession. If your tools are mandating how, when, and where you can perform your core tasks, you are not free.
You're dependent.
You're dependent, which leads us to this exoskeleton analogy. It explores the difference between using a tool to build strength and using a tool to just replace it.
And VR is mentioned here, used for meditation and fitness apps, which are all marketed as tools for well-being.
The intention is positive, of course, using tech for self-improvement. But the critical question is one of self-reflection. Am I using the tool or is it using me? If you need a specific, expensive, continuously updating piece of VR hardware just to meditate, are you really training your mind? Or are you training your dependency on the hardware?
I have to challenge that a little bit. Surely, if the VR headset helps you be more consistent with meditation or fitness, isn't that a net positive?
It is a positive output, yes. But the analogy pushes us to look deeper at the foundation. If you can't walk without an advanced powered exoskeleton, then you're not training strength. You're training dependency. You've trained the exoskeleton, not your legs.
I see the point.
If the $3,500 Apple Vision Pro is required for you to get 30 minutes of focused mindfulness, what happens when Apple releases the M5 chip version next year and your old hardware gets phased out?
Your peace of mind is instantly linked to an external, financially draining, and rapidly obsolete piece of machinery.
Exactly. That dependency becomes a vulnerability. We're not strengthening the core muscles of focus. We're just relying on the latest technical prosthetic to get us into that state.
The technology becomes a golden chain. It constrains you to the upgrade cycle just to maintain the same baseline level of performance you've gotten used to.
Moving from hardware to our internal landscape, let's look at how this quest for self-mastery is applied to the modern scourge of instant communication. This is where we see true discipline in action. This conscious decision to establish boundaries over instant messaging, specifically WhatsApp.
And this is more than just turning off your notifications. This is a systematic refusal to be reactive. The rule is strict. No messages sent after midnight. They're batched and scheduled to send at 9 a.m. the next morning.
The rationale here is pure self-mastery. It's refusing to be a slave to your own impulses. I mean, how many times have we, or you listening, written an email or a message late at night at 3 a.m. that you regretted in the morning?
Or that just needlessly disrupted someone else's peace. The moment of writing a message at 3 a.m. is governed by emotion, or maybe some sudden clarity, but the 9 a.m. scheduled send is governed by deliberation.
Exactly. You're creating a buffer between the thought and the action. And there was a great detail mentioned. Most of the time the message stays the same, but the option to delete it before the automated send time is still there.
That gap.
That gap, even if you rarely use it, confirms that you are in control. You're using the scheduling function as a tool for mental peace, not just technical convenience.
So what's the profound benefit of this kind of batching, beyond just, not annoying people at 3 a.m.?
The benefit is a reduction in cognitive load and the protection of your flow state. When you operate reactively, your brain is always on a slight alert, constantly monitoring for the next ping, the next expected response. It just fragments your attention.
And for high concentration activities like poker, trading, or playing the piano, you need that sustained, deep focus.
You need the flow state. By batching your communication, you eliminate that mental drag of constant availability. You're telling your brain, I am not available until 9 a.m., and you gain control and you gain peace.
And this commitment to peace extends to actively enforcing the quality of your interactions. We saw this with that anecdotal example of blocking a longtime acquaintance named Marion.
This is a radical move in today's world. The source says that Marion was sending mean or crap messages that messed up my days. Most people would just tolerate that kind of low-quality interaction because of social inertia. We've been friends for a long time.
But the person in the sources chose self-respect and mental peace over that social obligation. The goal was simple: enforce quality or enforce distance.
But the anecdote takes a strange turn. The user blocks Marion on one platform, WhatsApp, but keeps her on another, Teams, and then turns the resulting information vacuum into this sort of perverse guessing game.
Right, speculating how many messages, maybe 20 or 30, Marion might have sent on Teams without getting a reply.
And this is where we have to pause and apply some critical analysis. Is this truly self-mastery? Or is it a slight displacement activity, replacing external noise with an internal, almost narcissistic game of prediction?
That's a fair challenge. The act of blocking is mastery, but that internal fixation on how many missed messages there are, it feels like a continuation of the noise, just, internalized.
Exactly. You've achieved distance, but not total freedom from the shadow of that interaction.
So what's the takeaway then?
I think the subtlety is that true self-mastery should lead to indifference. However, in the transitional phase, this behavior is still a huge step forward. They've moved the interaction from a mandatory immediate interruption to a delayed, controllable mental curiosity.
They've stripped the communication of its power.
They have. They've successfully stripped Marion's messages of their power to demand immediate reactivity, proving that the commitment to peace outweighs the commitment to a low-quality, decades-long friendship.
And ultimately, all of these boundaries, the batched messages, the blocked contact, the scheduled work, they're all aimed at unlocking that highly coveted flow state.
Correct. Flow is the ultimate achievement of self-mastery, because it's the state of self-forgetting. When you are fully absorbed in a task, the ego just dissipates, and those tormenting thoughts, the worries, the anxieties, the desire for a new gadget, they all just fall away.
The source quotes the Buddhist concept of the wise man who sits until only the mountain remains.
This is profound wisdom applied to modern work. Sitting until only the mountain remains means the ego, the I, the subjective worries, they all disappear. And all that's left is the objective reality of the moment, the mountain, or in this case, the strategy analysis, the code, the music.
And the reflection here is powerful. Working 17 hours a day on interesting subjects, trading, research, piano achieves the same self-forgetting state. We usually think of peace as, rest, but here it's achieved through maximal focused effort.
It's active peace. When you're deeply engaged in something you find interesting, time disappears, and the friction of daily life just vanishes. The sources suggest that by achieving this deep, focused effort, the individual is outside of my head and less tormented.
The joy is in the process.
The joy is the music created by the effort itself, not the expected applause or monetary reward. The disciplined choice to work 17 hours on a passion is fundamentally a disciplined choice to escape internal torment and achieve internal harmony.
Okay, let's transition from internal control to financial control, because this is where the sources reveal a pretty critical chasm between discipline and reality. Despite all this mastery over communication and workflow, the budget confesses to being over budget last year and this year, funneling money into tech and tools instead of deeply desired personal development, like piano or vocal lessons.
This failure point is universal. The continuous financial hemorrhage required to maintain that digital exoskeleton outweighs the investment in the self. We established the lifetime tech cost is way above $50K. That figure is staggering.
It is.
And it underscores how easily professional justification can blind us to financial reality.
Let's put that $50K into context. We are talking about the cost of purchasing, replacing, and maintaining devices that are rapidly and intentionally designed for obsolescence.
We can break down the financial folly. Just consider flagship smartphones. If you're on a 2-year upgrade cycle, switching from the latest iPhone Pro to the next model, you're easily spending $1,500 every 24 months. Over a working lifetime, that alone compounds to $20,000, maybe $30,000, just on the device you carry in your pocket.
And then you add in the high-end monitors, gaming rigs, specialized peripherals.
And crucially, the revolving door of VR headsets. $50K quickly becomes the floor, not the ceiling.
That kind of spending is prompting a radical cultural response, which the sources highlight: the buy nothing movement.
This movement is the philosophical counterpoint to the addiction we just discussed. It's a complete rejection of continuous upgrades, luxury consumer items, and the belief that happiness requires perpetual replacement.
So they're arguing that most of what we buy isn't necessary.
Their argument is that the vast majority of consumer spending is not on meaningful necessity, but on maintaining social status and feeding an appetite for novelty.
So if the user is wrestling with constant tech spending, why study a movement that advocates for giving up, well, everything?
Because it provides the necessary extremity for perspective. If you're struggling with a $50,000 dependency, the buy-nothing ideal forces you to define what true necessity is. It asks, is my phone that's 3 years old still perfectly functional?
Does the marginal benefit of the latest processor justify the thousands of dollars I'm sinking into obsolescence?
Exactly. And this tension between desire and necessity is perfectly illustrated by these gadget temptation platforms, like Kickstarter. They often lure you in with the promise of genuinely innovative, non-mainstream tech.
Right, stuff you can't get in stores yet.
And Kickstarter is a double-edged sword. Sometimes you find genuinely useful breakthroughs. The sources detailed a success story, purchasing a fast scanner for about $150. This small purchase replaced old, expensive high-end scanners that cost $800 or even $1,500 but delivered poor quality. In this case, the tech upgrade was cheaper, more efficient, and objectively superior.
But the temptation usually points toward the extreme cost of cutting-edge obsolescence, and VR is the current flagship example of this financial folly.
Oh, absolutely. Look at the prices mentioned. The Apple Vision Pro at $3,500 versus the Samsung VR at $1.7, these aren't static items. They're quickly replaced every 2 or 3 years, primarily for marginal processor upgrades.
Moving from, say, an M3 to an M4 to an M5 chip.
And the consumer is paying a high premium just to chase computational speed that quickly becomes irrelevant.
Let's do the lifetime calculation on that. If you're upgrading a VR headset every 3 years, spending an average of, say, $2,500 each time, and you live for another 40 years.
You easily spend $30,000 to $50,000, maybe even $100,000 over a lifetime on a device used only, as the sources state, 1 hour a day.
1 hour a day.
If that device provided 10 hours of essential professional work daily, the cost might be justifiable. But for 1 hour of gaming or fitness or meditation, the return on investment is terrible.
And the maintenance cost of the dependency is astronomical. The technology is seductive, it promises immersion, but the financial discipline is utterly undermined.
And sometimes, this spending is just completely lost. Which brings us to that devastating anecdote of the expensive scooter.
Oh, yeah.
This anecdote perfectly encapsulates the fragility of material goods. The scooter wasn't a frivolous purchase, it was high performance. Fast, 45 kilometers an hour long range, capable of handling sharp slopes. It was intended as a serious mode of transport.
So a lot of time and effort went into researching and selecting the specific high-end model.
Exactly. You invest the time, the research, the considerable expense.
And it was stolen after only 1 month.
The loss wasn't just financial. It was the psychological weight of all the effort invested. It was a rapid, brutal lesson that technology, especially portable, high-value personal tech, holds no value.
Because it's both quickly obsolete and highly vulnerable to things like theft.
So the conclusion of the budgeting section is clear. You're constantly forced to buy a new exoskeleton when the old one breaks down or is stolen. But the real strength, like the piano and vocal lessons that were given up for tech purchases, that stays with you forever.
Absolutely. The technology is ephemeral. The skill, the ability to play the piano, the trained voice, the inner resilience, that is permanent. The financial folly is sacrificing permanent self-improvement for temporary utility.
You have to apply skepticism to every purchase. Is this necessary for genuine function, or is it just feeding the dependency cycle?
This commitment to inner strength versus external fixes transitions naturally to the discipline of the body. Here we contrast the discipline, low-tech approach to health with the modern quest for the easy pharmaceutical solution.
On the self-control side, the sources indicate a strong natural immunity, rarely getting sick, no fever, no flu, despite the exposure of public transport and client meetings.
And this is attributed to routine health maintenance like vitamin D supplements, suggesting a robust lifestyle achieved through simple consistency.
That robust immunity is the result of long-term, low-cost investment in the body's natural systems. It sets a high standard for health achieved without complex, expensive interventions.
And this contrasts sharply with the discussion around weight loss drugs, which have become this massive cultural phenomenon.
Right.
We need to talk impartially about the source's content regarding these drugs, which are named in the context as Ozempic or Zempic. What is the reported mechanism, and what are the controversial side effects that were mentioned?
So we're reporting here strictly on the contents of the sources and the reported context of the discussion. The mechanism centers on these GLP-1 agonists, which primarily work by mimicking hormones that signal satiety and, critically, by slowing gastric emptying.
So it's essentially paralyzing or drastically slowing the stomach's movement.
That's the idea. And this leads to reduced appetite and weight loss because of that prolonged feeling of fullness.
But the sources also report some severe consequences and controversies surrounding this quick fix mechanism.
Yes. The discussion indicates that the side effects are severe enough to have led to the drug being reportedly banned in some parts of Europe.
What kind of side effects are we talking about?
The sources detail specific, shocking risks.
Hmm.
The need, in some cases, to pump out undigested food from the stomach due to severe paralysis and the loss of teeth being a reported consequence.
Wow.
Furthermore, the weight loss is often contingent on continuous usage, with weight gain reportedly rebounding when the paralysis stops. So it suggests it treats the symptom, not the underlying metabolic issue or, discipline failure.
That's a terrible trade-off. Severe risk for a temporary fix. And we noted this controversy is tied up in politics, specifically the reported desire from the previous Trump administration to potentially make the drug free in the U.S.
That political context really highlights the societal desire for a rapid, mass-market solution to a complex public health crisis, regardless of the cost or the documented side effects. It's the ultimate expression of the exoskeleton philosophy applied to the body.
Relying on an expensive, high-risk external mechanism rather than promoting disciplined self-control and lifestyle changes.
Which brings us to this Stoic, disciplined health choice, which stands in stark opposition.
Fasting. The ultimate anti-consumerist health choice.
Exactly. It's better for health, it costs nothing, and it saves time and money by reducing consumption and the cognitive load of deciding what to eat and when.
How far does this practice go in the source material? It sounds pretty extreme.
The practical suggestion is quite extreme, but highly disciplined. Fasting up to 80% of the year. But crucially, this isn't starvation. It's intermittent or rotational fasting.
So you're still getting nutrients.
Yes, ensuring that during the remaining 20% of the year, a healthy, nutritious diet is maintained to get essential vitamins, meat, and vegetables. The goal is to maximize the time the body is in a state of repair and recovery autophagy, or still covering all your nutritional bases.
And the diet is simplified to reduce both cost and decision fatigue.
The simple diet proposed is rice. It's cheap, easy to cook, provides essential calories, and most importantly, it curbs spending and consumption. You eliminate the endless grocery decisions and the temptation of expensive processed foods.
The beverage choice is simplified similarly.
Switching exclusively to tea, except for the occasional orange flavor, to reduce the intake of harmful chemicals often found in highly processed items like hot chocolate, energy drinks, and even fast food pastries like croissants.
So simplifying your diet isn't just about saving money, it's about reducing chemical load and reducing the mental energy spent on choice.
Exactly. When you only drink tea, you don't waste time in a restaurant asking 10 questions about coffee options or sugar substitutes. You just ask for tea. It's an act of mental concentration, concentrating on one thing and forgetting the rest.
It's clarity achieved through refusal.
It is. The disciplined body is achieved through simplicity and denial, which is the direct opposite of the quick fix, expensive dependency of the pharmaceutical route.
Okay, we end this deep dive where self-mastery meets ruthless calculation. the poker table.
Mm-hmm.
This environment requires the same inner control we've been discussing, controlling impulse, avoiding reactivity, and making decisions based on probability, not hope.
The core lesson is clear. A bad hand isn't the problem, it's how you play it.
And wisdom demands knowing when to fold.
Poker is a perfect microcosm of life strategy. Wisdom really does demand knowing when to fold, regardless of how invested you feel or how strong your desire to stay in the action is. We're applying rational decision-making to risk management, which requires a deep understanding of the math.
All right, let's look at the first-hand review. King 3 offsuit. K3-0 played from the small blind with a large stack, 70 big blinds.
Right, and for listeners, the big blind is the standard minimum bet, and 70 is a very comfortable stack size. K3-0 means king in 3, not the same suit.
And that's a loose hand to begin with.
Oh, very loose. It's a hand you generally shouldn't play, but the risk was calculated. Only half a big blind to see the flop, the pot was 10 times larger than the risk.
But the trouble began on the flop. Ace, king, diamond board.
Exactly. The player hit a king, which is good, but the ace and the potential diamond flush draw make it perilous.
Then multiple opponents bet half the pot. This shows strong interest, strength. The decision was to fold. Was this too disciplined? Shouldn't you defend your hand?
And this is where discipline triumphs over emotion. When you're facing half-pot bets from multiple opponents, you're getting poor implied odds to hit the best hand, and you expose yourself to huge reverse implied odds.
Okay, what are reverse implied odds in this context?
It means that when you do hit your hand, say you hit a second king for 2 pair, you are very likely to still lose a huge pot because someone else already has a better hand.
Like a flush or a better 2 pair.
Or their diamond flush draw is better than your 2 pair. On an ace-king board with a diamond draw, hitting the king with a 3 kicker is a trap. You've exposed yourself to 2 diamonds, ace-x, or even king-x with a better kicker.
So the fold, while painful, was correct. What hands should continue on that dangerous board?
Only very strong hands. A set of pair that makes 3 of a kind, an ace with a strong kicker or a king with a diamond kicker that also gives you flush draw protection. And critically, 2 diamonds for a strong flush draw.
I see.
The key insight is that the ability to fold a vulnerable paired hand like K3 on a wet multi-way board is pure self-mastery. You're avoiding the costly mistake of escalating a small loss into a major defeat.
Let's move to the second hand, ace-x suited, which provided a deep dive into reading opponent aggression and bet sizing. This is one of the most critical principles in a high-level strategy.
It is. Player 1 was betting aggressively twice in a row, making them look fishy, or like a gambling player.
The temptation is to just categorize them as a bluffer and dismiss it.
Right, but strategy demands adherence to mathematical confirmation, not impulse. We focused on the relationship between bet sizing and hand likelihood, a core concept from game theory optimal, or GTO, play.
So why is the probability argument so important? Why are small bets like 1/3 of the pot or less exponentially more common than larger bets?
Because of the hierarchy of hand strength. The stronger the hand, the rarer it is. Think of the probabilities. You flop a set, 3 of a kind, only about 1 in 8 times when you hold a pocket pair. You flop 2 pair even less often.
So most of the time, you have nothing that great.
That's right. 80% to 90% of the time, the player does not have a monster hand. They have a weak pair, a weak draw, or just air. Therefore, most of their action, especially a smaller bet, has to represent that abundant, weaker part of their range.
So if a player bets small, they're usually trying to get value from their marginal hands or protect a weak hand.
Precisely. They're hoping to push you out with a minimal investment, and this insight is crucial for dictating your response. If you know the small bet represents weakness, you can exploit it.
Okay, let's use the King 10 example we discussed. How does that mathematical principle dictate whether King 10 is a call or a raise?
Okay, imagine you hold King 10 and the board is K8-2. If your opponent bets very small, say 20% of the pot, your King 10, which is top pair with a weak kicker, is strong enough to raise. Because the small bet signals weakness. You want to exploit that weakness and take the pot down immediately. You punish their small sizing.
But if they bet large, say 75% of the pot.
If they bet large, they are signaling strength. The math says strong hands are rare, but when they do show up, they are usually signaled by a larger bet size. Against a large bet, your King 10 is typically only a call.
You can't afford to raise.
You can't, because if you get re-raised, you're almost certainly beat. This established the core principle. The smaller the opponent's bet, the weaker your raising range can be. The larger the bet, the stronger your hand has to be to justify continued aggression. It's just rationality applied to variance.
Finally, in that same hand, we looked at player 4's strategy. They checked the turn after the spade hit, which completed some flush draws, and then they bet the river when player 1, the initial aggressor, slowed down.
That's the highest level of mastery.
It felt like it.
It is elegant. Player 4, who looked like they were on a draw on the flop, acted passively on the turn. Why? They were waiting for the primary aggressor, player 1, to continue betting. When player 1 checked, it signaled they were either bluffing or they slowed down because they missed their high-equity continuation bet.
Their hand was now vulnerable.
Right. And player 4 read that passivity perfectly. They seized the initiative. By betting the river, player 4 assumed the mantle of strength, whether they completed their draw or simply had a medium-strength hand that could exploit player 1's perceived weakness.
They didn't have to lead the entire hand, they just waited.
They waited for the opponent to show disinterest before attacking. It's a masterclass in exploiting hesitation and passivity, reinforcing that mastery is often about patience and reading the opponent, not just the cards.
This entire deep dive, covering the frustration of monitor screws, the financial folly of obsolescence, the discipline of fasting, and the calculus of the poker table. It all converges on one single theme.
Self-mastery is the control of dependencies.
That's it.
Absolutely. It means choosing deliberate action over impulse. It means distinguishing between the utility of a tool and the dependency it creates. And we return to Marcus Aurelius' defining question, which should ring in the ears of anyone chasing the latest upgrade or instant fix.
Can you lose it all? The technology, the budget, the reputation, and still remain yourself? If not, you're already owned.
If your ability to focus is tied to an app, if your health is tied to a prescription, or your peace is tied to a quick, low-quality message, you're already owned by that system.
And this brings us to our final provocative thought, which explores the ultimate expression of control through radical detachment. The anecdote of the man who went completely off-grid.
A fascinating story.
Tell us more about this vanishing act.
The source material detailed a man who decided to abandon the entire system. No electricity, no plumbing, no connectivity, a return to extreme solitude, making his life objectively difficult through necessity.
He built his own shelter, hunted for food,
and intentionally put distance between himself and, quote, the rest of humanity.
And what was the result of this total absence?
He became a celebrity because of his vanishing act. People were so captivated by his purposeful solitude that he became a symbol, the ultimate antidote to modern connectivity. They fly in, pay money, and travel great distances just to see his humble cabin.
Wow.
The government was eventually forced to commission someone to maintain the property just because of the public interest in his deliberate absence.
He achieved fame not by participating in the system, but by utterly rejecting it. His life was harder, hunting, building, isolation. But the source posits that he found a deeper sense of happiness and peace than he would have found chasing status and consumption in a typical professional career.
Yes, like being a lawyer or an architect. It challenges the fundamental assumption of our current existence. The utility, connectivity, and continuous consumption are prerequisites for fulfillment. He found fulfillment in the distance itself.
So we leave you with this final challenging thought that builds on the concept of achieving fame through absence. If true self-mastery requires building distance from the systems that constantly demand your attention, the screens, the subscriptions, the instant messaging, what distance are you willing to put between yourself and constant demands?
Is there a piece of technology, an interaction, or dependency you need to unplug in order to sit, like the wise man, until only the mountain remains?